welcome to another Best Junglers episode, this one for patch 13.17. And in this one we have a pretty decent meta shaker because someone at Riot thought it was a great idea to buff Gore Drinker, Spear of Shojin, and Stride Breaker. Yeah, I know, I don't know who thought of this or why it was a good idea, but it's absolutely one of the worst decisions they've made this year in terms of balance. They've also nerfed Kindred and Kayn and reworked the Xin Zhao a little bit with the Hecarim as well as shifted jungle catch-up experience just a little bit. And so we will go over the best picks for every single MMR as well as the best picks for low elo as well as high elo. And the best way to stay on top of the new builds is to use the Mobalytics 2.0 build feature. It's faster, it's more accurate, and while most sites just assess the items individually, Mobalytics now assesses them as part of a build, so it's way more accurate and reflective of how good they are. You can't just show a third item and say look at the win rate when you have no idea what the first two items were. All of this updated and pushed live to the companion app where you can put it directly into your client, along with all of the pre-game tips, post-game tips, as well as in-game tips such as itemization notification, level spike awareness, tips on how to play your champion, how to counter the enemy team composition. So if you want to dominate on the best junglers in the best way with all of the best information and keep up to date with all of the new itemization changes as the meta develops, click the link in the description below to download Mobalytics today. So on the S-tier page, we have to start off with Jarvan. Much to King Nidog's depression that he will not see his champion for a few weeks, Riot decided, hey, this champion's really OP with this Gore Drinker Spear of Shojin build. Let's make it stronger without nerfing Jarvan whatsoever. Champion was already good, and now he can EQ 200 times a minute while having 10,000 HP. And even though that is an exaggeration, it's not as big of an exaggeration as you would think. The champion simply does it all. Long gone are the days where you would just expect a 3-camp gank or a level 2 cheese or a level 2 gank. Now he can honestly just full clear and he can do any single game plan he wants. He can become the assassin that you hate, he can become the peeler and the engager. He is the ultimate and total jungler. And Gore Drinker and Spear of Shojin have just made him that much stronger. My tip and advice to face Jarvan this patch with this build: ban it, don't worry about it, and enjoy your life. Now I do rate Rek'Sai a little bit more highly than most others would, but that's because I think of it from a climbing perspective. If you were to lock in Rek'Sai, build Stride Breaker, which was also buffed for no particular reason, all the champions that were building this item were doing well anyway, and Riot even said in the patch notes, hey, this item is strong, but, and then they gave it 75 HP. Doesn't seem like a lot, but it is kind of a big deal, and now Rek'Sai is just as strong or even stronger than she was. Actually, you know what, none of the nerfs have done anything. The champion is still strong. Nerf it again, please, Riot. And that is the words of a Rek'Sai one trick from my private Discord who's reached master tier with the champion. I honestly believe if you understand pressure output and you understand snowballing, then this is one of the best champions for you to play in the jungle in the current patch. Next up we have Graves, and as always, I think he is an exquisite pick in the jungle for this particular season. Most people don't play him properly, efficiently, or jungle well enough with the champion to see the rewards you can get by playing him at that level. Whether you prefer the map control style, the jungle deny style, some split pushing, I've covered all of these in coaching sessions many times and on this channel also. Just get used to your fluidity with your mechanics and making quick decisions. You never want to be standing still or waffling with the champion. Also your Graves. I see way too many Graves run away from 1v1s they can actually win, so please make sure you are practicing that phase as well. Hey, Hecarim's here. We could put him higher, but again, Hecarim remains among the worst, I'm sorry guys, at adapting your builds and playstyle to what's actually strong on the champion. Spear of Shojin is absolutely busted. This champion was already building, and now the build path is better, he gets even more HP. You don't need to build Mana Moon second, so stop doing that. You don't need to build Duskblade, that's at a 43% win rate. Now the best way to play is to go back to that fighter itemization style. You will still be unkillable, unholy, tanky, except through, you know, having a lot of HP built in. And thus you are not building like an assassin, so you no longer need to play like an assassin, and you can go back to just running into team fights and doing what you do best. His win rate doesn't look good because his itemization build paths are not good either. Go look at the win rate data, you will see that the items are the issue in terms of pick rates, and if you take away all of the bad itemization choices, the champion's win rate is mighty spicy. Hey, Evelynn is here again, still, despite no changes whatsoever to her, or anything that might be remotely relevant to her as a champion. However, the shifting of experience and catch-up experience is important. If you fall behind on Evelynn, you are now going to notice you're not going to have as much of a way back into the game. Likewise, if you're able to get a huge lead as any assassin, not just Evelynn, but specifically Evelynn, the enemy champions will not be able to catch up as easily in those moments where you've become that oppressive queen of the jungle and you spam ganking their bot lane between turrets as they respawn and die again. Until such time that they directly impact your numbers or change your itemization or really make counters super giga strong, although Rek'Sai is one of those counters, so if you're an Evelynn, just ban the Rek'Sai. She's going to remain in this, I guess, fiddlesticks tier of just really ascending above whatever the meta is. She knows what she wants to do as a champion, she has her own weird way of playing the game, and the chaos around her doesn't always impact her in any real way. Following her, we have Bel'Veth, who has had a lot of item diversity this season. Once they decided to giga nerf Kraken and remove it from mythic status, all the Bel'Veth mains were freaking out and worried about, hey, what are we going to build? In the end, they realized, hey, we should probably still be building Kraken Slayer. What changed was, do we go Black Cleaver Radiant Virtue? Do we stick with like a Blade of the Rune King Death's Dance Wit's End with a Jack Show, one of those combinations? Or as I have shown in my videos, the Stridebreaker Blade of the Rune King tech. Don't have to go Blade of the Rune King, but you do go Stridebreaker. This was her best in slot in terms of win rate for Mythics. And yes, you could have gone Rageblade as well for those of you who are saying, but you didn't mention Rageblade. There you go. Rageblade was your DPS option if you wanted it as well. But now with the Stridebreaker buffs, again, 75 HP doesn't seem like a lot, but it can actually be quite a decent amount in terms of item buff. And when you're talking about a champion that needs to go in, that wants to stick to people, that needs to survive in certain moments, that extra HP will always be valuable, which is why she likes things like the Jack Show and Radiant Virtue builds. So in conclusion, Bel'Veth is very strong. Next we have Kha'Zix, and as I said in my patch note rundown in the private Discord, hey, this nerf is a slap on the wrist, it's not really going to do anything, 5% lol. It has dipped his win rate a little bit, but him being down here on this list is not against the Kha'Zix. It's just because while he is still just as strong as he was, the champions around him have become that much stronger, and he has those matchup issues when you talk about S tier junglers, best junglers in the game. He's not something that you necessarily blind pick and run over everybody, like you would with a Jarvan. But honestly, a good Kha'Zix doesn't give a shit about that and absolutely smurfs it up, so go ahead. So I'm going to put Fiddlesticks here, but we're going to talk about something else. Now in this final slot, I actually had Kindred because I thought, hey, these are definitely big nerfs, but they're going to affect most of the unskilled Kindreds or the unknowing Kindreds, yes? The E nerf will affect your early skirmishes and your early ganks and invades, but in teamfights later on, once you've sort of leveled up and got your marks and got your itemization, the champion's still going to be giga strong. However, part of recommending best junglers is also saying, hey, can people play this champion? Can they execute this champion without, taking a PhD in how to play it? And while I think Kindred is still absolutely fine and strong for your high elo players, your people who main it, for the general population in terms of, hey, let me play a best jungler that's meta this patch, I am actually not comfortable recommending it given the data is looking quite not so good. And the reason why I said all of those things about Kindred and not Fiddle is because, as you know, my recommendation is, if you want to one-trick something that's totally unique, will absolutely exist no matter what, and Riot love to keep it a good high win rate, Fiddlesticks is absolutely one of the best junglers to one-trick, thrive, survive, suck, and dive. And onto the A tier page, this one I decided to mix up a little bit and say, hey, what do I actually think is kind of giga, but not quite in the meta-defining role? And hey, Karthus, I love this pick overall. If a highly skilled diamond player is like, look, I'm stuck, I need to get to Master Plus, I want to climb through high elo as well, and they want something quite skillful, go Karthus, man. You can 252 full clear, invade people with exhaust, you beat Rengars early, you're low range, but you can kill everybody, you scale beautifully, you sequence well. What does he not do? Well, given he's basically dead, he probably doesn't eat hamburgers, but hey. Next up, we have Echo, who just received those minor buffs in the last patch, and yes, Futures Market has been nerfed, but that's basically how I feel about it. Overall, I don't necessarily think he's one of the quote-unquote best junglers, but I think he's a thinker's jungler. If you're a master map manipulator, and you're actually able to counter gank and trap, you have a really strong knowledge of the jungle's nervous system, so you can always pinch and push whichever one you think is going to be the most powerful in terms of generating a response. This champ will reward you greatly. Much like Nocturne, again, he is not rated by a lot, but I think for a general person looking to climb for something that is a great skirmisher, farmer, has macro, has a decent semi-global ultimate, and builds that buff Stridebreaker, as well as the broken Black Cleaver, there's just not a lot of things better at having a total package. Good at everything, master of nothing, but something that you can use to climb all the way to master with no stress at all. Look, if a Gurren can do it in Korea, you can do it too, right? Next up, we have the nerfed Kayn, 20% reduction on that WAD ratio. Ross dies for the Shadow Assassin, but considering the Shadow Assassin was completely overpowering everybody and overkilling everybody and overpoking everybody, he's still gonna be strong. The 5 base damage nerf was an insult to injury, but again, all Kayn mains, if you're worried about it, don't be. Just go play your game, do everything you've always done, and you will still have a lot of fun. Also, if you happen to be a Ross player, they buffed Gordrinker, Spear of Shojin, so, off you go. Following this, we have Viego, the very popular champion. Of course, not in lore because they destroyed that with that ridiculous event and storyline. Much like Nocturne, a little bit of that good at everything, master of nothing kind of thing. He doesn't overtake anyone above him in terms of skirmishing or ganking or farming or sequencing or fighting, it doesn't matter. But a good Viego, again, understands snowball and pressure much like the Echo. So if you can find those little holes, those moments, get one good fight and reset component, even in a losing game state, you can start to take over. He's definitely more strong in high elo at the moment, but I think people are realizing, hey, we can go back to playing Viego. His itemization diversity is once more there. And while I don't always recommend this, I did actually face a full crit Viego the other day, so there's a lot of stuff you can do. The champion's great. Now, just because Zach Gaming puts on Twitter the Gordrinker Shojin build doesn't necessarily mean you should do it, but that is a thing that exists. Overall, the regular Zac builds are still going to make him super duper strong, and when you have big divers with meaty HP shields and a lot of CC that are diving on your carries, hey, pick a Zac, peel it, gank it, snowball the wing con, and keep them alive from the evil Jarvans of the world. Next up we have Xin Xiao. This is, again, I always like to put a nice strong niche pick at the bottom of the A tier page here, but they really buffed his healing on that passive. So if you build full squishy, you're not going to have a lot of fun, but because it's now based on maximum HP and all of the items that fighters build have a lot more HP this patch, you're doing the math, right? A double buff. Almost a bit of a Rek'Sai analog in terms of how you need to play the game, but at the same time now you have the healing, for the sustain, for the mid game, for the late game, and you have the itemization to help you, again, thrive in those situations. And the next one here is Lilia. Now, normally you would not put Lilia here, but we just spoke about all of the HP buffs to these fighter items. Lilia is a fighter, but she's an AP fighter with percentage damage that builds items that do percentage damage. And she was kind of good in the first place anyway, so you see where I'm going with this. She also has the ability to out-kite some of these champions while poking them, has great lockdown for those team fights, is a very, very underrated skirmisher because you just cannot touch her in those scenarios, and she just whittles you down, and then hits you with a true damage swoop-de-doop or a bonus damage bonk with a W. Champion, good, play, yes. Next we have the low elo page, and once more Yarvin the Fourth, it's the same one by the way, is on the top of the list. But here I keep the Shyvana, because the but the buffs to the AD were wonderful. But that makes her a stat checker, and when she's a stat checker, OP in low elo, even if in high elo she's fine, they nerf it, so now she's just a low elo champion. It seems we will have to wait for the rework for her to be a totally balanced thing. I love Diana at the moment. Honestly, you could put Diana on the A tier side over the Lilia as well if you like. It's something I do rate quite highly. It's also strong in high elo ever since they buffed her as well. And with all of these AD fighters running around and AD focused champions, Ramus will help you see glory. And then again, Lilia super strong down here along with the Kayn, and Amumu, he's legendary at this point. He will never leave this MMR range. The thing that's funny is we still don't see Master Yi here. When it's Cenarius, it's an S++ tier champion. Otherwise, he's just struggling to find a way to get into the meta, to find a way to get going, but a good Master Yi will still find ways to use the true damage, be a little bit irritating and disgusting, and help you win games. He's just not one of the best junglers for low MMR. As we shift on over to the high elo page, now we have a few things to talk about. Nidalee obviously shows up here as well. Great champion, very, very strong, but in high elo. Needs hands, needs brains. Likewise with Taliyah, I would also put Taliyah in the S and the A tier page, but again, needs hands, needs brains. Also has a bit of conditional setup with her W, but the champion is very, very strong. I thought about putting Kindred here as well, but I'm looking at the pick rate, the ban rate, the win rate, and it's just not hitting. The overall player base who plays Kindred who are not mains have moved on to better things and are struggling to get over that E nerf. What they could do before, they no longer can do. And I remember when released Kindred had a 90% slow on that E, and now it's a fraction of that, so I do understand why muscle memory will play a factor in this. But keep an eye on that Kindred win rate in high elo. I think it will be good as the patch goes on. And likewise the Kha'Zix, Rek'Sai, Graves, obviously I do rate them highly in general population, but also in high elo as well. Even if you can play your Echoes and your Evelyns and your Rengars, your Elises as well who just got buffed. Xin Zhao's gonna be good here, Hecarim's gonna be good here. So a lot of these champions are great in high elo too. I just think these are the ones that have the biggest presence, the ones that have the best impact, and if you're unsure what to play, there you go. And that's the best junglers for patch 13.17 and hopefully 13.18 with not too many changes. And as always, I will see you all in the video in the box on your top right.